We see that repeating some points summarily would be helpful to make them well understood. Conscience, reality, comprehension, knowledge, love, in short, all values manifesting in the world are only material appearances that have taken their forms within the possibilities of brain substance. True values of these are in the powers hidden within the essence being. And their functions within the world possibilities work only for the path of service to essence being. Therefore, they are world forms, states and appearances which can be measured by superficial time comprehension that is only valid in the world. And the values in the essence being, which they feed and are agents of their developments, are the true values gaining in value by the comprehension possibilities, which we may call infinite, of spherical time, which the essence being is subject to, and these values indicate the degree of spirit's evolution in universe. These subtle combinations that gain in value by the spherical or perceptual time technique cannot be defined or qualified by the superficial time comprehension of the world. So, all words stated in all knowledge pertaining to the conscience mechanism, such as comprehension, knowledge, reality, component, love, etc., should be taken within these concepts and with their own values. For example, the side of love that is mentioned expresses its values belonging to the world. A man who thinks with world time can never penetrate its state and meaning in the face of perceptual time which belongs to the being. Likewise, it is also not possible for mankind to comprehend the love combinations in the subtle realm which follows the world, and is subject to spherical or perceptual time technique. Only the beings that completely left their bodies by ascending will understand the true meanings of these when they pass to that realm. If these sentences are to be visited after seeing the knowledge of superficial and spherical time, it would be easier to intuit the degree of the scope in the vibrations, which are the counterparts of love in the being, and which advance with the spherical time technique, as compared to the human love, depending on superficial time comprehension. And it would be possible to make an intuitive comparison between the primitive state of love on the face of one surfaced, simple human comprehension, and the endless scope of love impressions in the superhuman realm that contains infinite imaginative surfaces, that is, its magnificent state shining within essence knowledge. We have discussed the knowledge and love of the factors enriching essence knowledge. However, besides these, there is another component as well, playing a powerful role in the increase of essence knowledge, which has not yet been appreciated by mankind. These are the influences sent to the beings of mankind, by those beings in duty at various levels of evolution in the world. These influences increase communal knowledge values acquired, both individually and usually through these individuals, in ways and forms which cannot be guessed at by mankind. And we call people who receive these influences mediums. For mankind, mediumship means acquiring sensitivity to receiving universe influences and universe vibrations. In the world, the most significant of the influences effectuating mediumistic reactions is sublime intuitive influences. In the makeup of mediums, the possibilities and power enabling to easily express the influences sent are more. This rule is valid for physical mediums, as well. However, the difference is that, in the former, incoming influences are very subtle vibrations, pertaining to the sublime comprehension combinations. As to the physical mediums, incoming influences are directed to accrued matter, and brought about various formations, transformations, deformations, or simpler motions as a result of the reactions in that crude matter. Thus, in a general view there are two appearances of mediumship, one intuitive and the other physical. Before we start to explain the mechanism of mediumship, some preliminary knowledge needs to be given, so we will begin by stating these. For this, first of all, some states of the human brain must be mentioned. Brain is the prevailing organ of the body, constituted by atom ensembles, and put into effect by molecules containing higher functions and motions of these. Throughout the human body, there are cells, and each has certain particular frequencies of motion. The more the motion of a cell, the higher is its degree of power and activity. Most active cells in the human body are brain cells. Actually, by means of this excess of motions, brain cells can receive impressions belonging to the world. Likewise, the parts in the brain, where the motions of molecules are the greatest, which represent the consciousness center, are the most fluidic and powerful parts. Thus, consciousness centers have high frequencies which correspond to their high functions. Brain cells have, in the accustomed states, certain frequencies particular to them. These can increase for various reasons. And when increased, their activities and powers increase as well. So, the beings sending influences to mediums govern the functions of these as they wish by increasing the motions in the centers they want to use, either directly or via the channel of consciousness. Let us give a comparative example with relative numbers. Imagine that frequency of consciousness centers molecules in accustomed states is 40,000 per second, when in a trance state, that is, when the medium is under the influence of a being, these frequencies elevate to 60,000 or 70,000 per second. So, with this increase of frequencies in the consciousness center, activity there increases, as well as comprehension expanding. Expansion of comprehension depends on the increase of this frequency. And the increase of the frequency occurs, as and when the being sending that influence deems suitable. So, by increase of motions, the medium's ability and comprehension to express the meanings of influence received increase as well. Mediums convey these meanings to the outer realms via the means mankind can understand, by speaking or writing or another way. We call these intuitive mediums. There are also physical mediums. Here, the incoming influences are either cruder than the vibrations of matter, which will receive the influences, or suitable to it. If cruder, when these influences pass through the medium and enter that matter, and because it cannot feed its higher combinations as we previously explained, this entails their erasure or disintegration, and this, in turn, puts into effect the phenomena called materialization. If the incoming influences contain vibrations suitable to the structure of that matter, then the medium's efficacy in that matter increases, and paves the way for possibilities of various formations and manifestations. In this way, materializations, phantoms, apports, states and motions of innumerable physical appearances of things, called by many names, are brought about. Phenomena observed by mankind within the group of physical mediumship belong to this mechanism that these are put into effect by executing the value differentiation mechanism and duality principle in matter, and consequently, with the occurrence of states like motions, displacements and finally, dispersion and gatherings of molecules. Although this is not an exact number, there are approximately 90 or 100 centers in the brain. And of these, there are 900 or 1000 secondary centers, that is, stations which have regular functions in the body. So, the influences coming from the essence being to the brain are distributed from the consciousness centers of the brain to these centers, and from there, according to the needs, to the secondary centers or stations. Now, we will talk about the mechanisms of states such as sleep, dreams, obsession, and mediumship, which are observed in mankind at certain times, respectively. However, in order to explain the basic technique of these mechanisms, it is necessary to repeat some preliminary knowledge. This preliminary knowledge is pertaining to the connection and relations between the being and brain. As we previously mentioned, 7/8 of the human being is connected to the human brain. That is, 7 parts of the being are connected to the brain and 1 part is free. The parts connected to the brain occupy a region constituted by certain brain cells we call the consciousness center. The consciousness center governs other centers and they, in turn, govern secondary centers. In this way, governance of the being over the body is ensured by centers and stations, influencing each other by degrees, starting with the consciousness center. Previously, we termed the part of the human being connected to the brain consciousness, and the part remaining free superconsciousness. Thus, the consciousness center which the being is connected to, is a region of a brain, constituted by the molecules with the most motions. The whole body is governed from this center. The consciousness center is always in relation with the outside, that is, with the being. The increase or the decrease of this center's activity depends on the increase or decrease of its motions by the influences arriving at it. As to the free part of the being, that is not connected to brain, we termed it superconsciousness. It is necessary to divide this into two sections. However, let us say this: that the being is a subtle energies whole which cannot be subject to dividing or separation, in the sense that mankind understands it. Therefore, layered or concentric sections in it cannot be thought, that is, unlike it is for the brain, regions cannot be designated for it. However, in regard to some functions we have to explain here an imperative for expressing such separate states of activity in the being, with the symbol of regions. So, the dividing we do here or the names we give, belong to the states expressing these functions. Otherwise, in fact, there are no divided, separated parts or regions in the being. So as not to be mistaken, we would like to explain this situation with an example. Although this example is rough, in comparison with the state of the being we would like to explain, and is, again, a reality belonging to our world. However, it will help the issue we would like to explain above, to be easily intuited. Imagine a certain volume of hydrogen remains gathered, without dispersing in the vacuum, for example. This mass is constituted with a large number of hydrogen atoms. Now, let us divide these atoms into a few groups with distinct characters, in regard to some deeds we assume that they carry out. So, each group will have a distinct function. For example, the function of some atoms is to catch the light vibrations, the function of other atoms is particular to heat vibrations, and the function of other atoms is to detect electrical vibrations. Three kinds of atom characters, separated in regard to their functions, exist at this hydrogen ensemble, in a complete disorder, and are not gathered as groups in distinct places. In this way, these atoms that do not have particular regions, are nevertheless separated from each other in regard to their functions. However, the being we mention does not display such a material state as a hydrogen atom ensemble. Nevertheless, although applying this example directly to this issue is not correct, it is possible to gain an intuition out of it. For, it is certainly understood, from the knowledge we have given so far about the being, that even thinking of a certain mass in a certain place for the being is not appropriate. Therefore, without subjecting the being to distinct and separate regional locations, there are influence complexes with distinct and separate functions in it, which we cannot comprehend. In this way, we have said that the free field of the superconsciousness, that is, of the being which is not connected to body, is divided into two parts. More correctly, it has two distinct and separate functional sides. The first of these is the part we call higher consciousness. This is the side of the being which is open to the outside. Influences coming from the spirit of the being enter from this side of the being. Likewise, influences coming from above and from the beings around land at this part as well. The second part of the superconsciousness field is the subconscious. This is, again, the being's closed front to the outside, in regard to function. No influence arrives at the subconscious field from outside. And it does not send any influences to outside. However, here is the repository for all accumulating acquisitions of the being throughout the whole universe. Therefore, all impressions of past lives exist in the subconscious. Essence knowledge is preserved here. So, as we previously said, only acquisitions which became essence knowledge and owned by essence being can enter here. Higher consciousness and subconscious have communication with the consciousness. These can inter-exchange with each other. However, the communication of the subconscious and higher consciousness, or to put it another way, of the superconsciousness with the consciousness, does not occur directly. There is also an intermediary function acting as a bridge, which we call the unconscious. Thus, the unconscious is the being's third field of function, which intermediates the exchange between the consciousness and superconsciousness. However, the unconscious has another function as such: impressions belonging to the knowledge which comes from the outer realm, world, daily life, to the consciousness, but which has not yet become essence knowledge, are gathered in this region, that is, in the unconscious, and stay there until death. So, the unconscious field, naturally, what we mean by the term field can be understood, is at the same time a knowledge repository of the consciousness. Consciousness can, when necessary, without descending to the subconscious, take and use the required material from this unconscious. These are the results of the knowledge belonging to the last world life of the being, that is, to the life man goes through. This knowledge, after going through a comparative accounting, as we have previously said, is pushed to the unconscious, and this accounting is rendered by the conscience. Unconscious knowledge, again as previously said, becomes essence knowledge and nestles in the subconscious only after death, by going through the great accounting as the being compares these with subconscious knowledge. Events that occur in the consciousness within daily life pass to this unconscious field during sleep. Actually, fields of unconsciousness and of consciousness are very close to each other and in a frequent communication.